Good morning, Michigan. My name is Kate Smith, and I am one of the Literacy Dyslexia consultants at Michigan's MTSS Technical Assistance Center. I have the great honor of being able to introduce our fabulous speakers today at the Dyslexia Summit. So to kick us off, we have Dr. Pam Kastner. Dr. Kastner is a literacy consultant and the former state lead for literacy at the Pennsylvania Training and Technical Assistance Network, known as PATN. Currently, she is honored to serve as a contributing faculty member in the Reading Science program at Mount St. Joseph University, where she teaches in the master's and doctoral programs and was named Adjunct Professor of the Year in 2023. Dr. Kastner has presented widely across the United States and internationally. She collaborates with state departments of education and school districts nationwide to provide on-site technical assistance, consultation, and coaching. Dr. Kastner serves on the Pennsylvania Literacy Coalition and has the honor of serving as the president of the Reading League Pennsylvania, the Reading League Journal's Practitioner Editorial Board, and is a member of the Science of Reading, a Defining Movement Coalition. We are so fortunate to have Pam with us here today to share her expertise and to help us look more closely at how spelling is a powerful window into students' underlying language systems. Dr. Kastner has offered to share her slides with us, but please note that the slides will be shared with participants after the presentation per her request. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Pam Kastner.
Hi, good morning, everyone. What an honor it is to be with you today in Michigan. We are having a little bit of technical issues with my presentation, and so the wonderful John is going to be advancing those slides. So just wanted to share that with you real quickly. As you likely know, if you know me a little bit, you know that I always share a Padlet of resources to be accessed after the presentation so that we can extend your learning. I really value our time together, but it's always too short. So what you're seeing there is the PowerPoint presentation, as well as some wonderful handouts for you to access afterwards. So John, if you can just go to the next slide. This is a QR code to that Padlet, and it has a very tricky password. The word is spelling with a capital S. So I will share that again at the end of the presentation so you can access those resources. All right, John, thanks so much for sharing that. So the title of our presentation today is Spelling as Visible Language, because it is Diagnostic Insight and Instructional Action for Students with Dyslexia. We'll just move forward then. Thank you. So this is what we'll focus on in our learning time in our hour or so together. We're going to be talking about the interdependence of language in literacy and the relationship between dyslexia and spelling. And in particular, what does that look like in a multi-tiered system of support? And as Dr. Louisa Motes says, spelling is visible language. It comes from her. And truly looking at spelling errors provides us a very important diagnostic information that can inform our instruction and our intervention in a very meaningful way. And then we're going to embed practices that align to that diagnosis to inform your instruction, both in Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. So thanks, John. Also, everyone does everything. I know I'm not with you in person, but I am going to do as much as I can to keep you engaged. Part of that will be close drop. And what that means is anytime you see something bolded, wherever you are, please, you do the speaking part too. And if you can, please grab a quick piece of paper and pen or something that you can write with, because there will be some stop and jots along the way. So that's how we'll be engaged. Let's start out, first of all, of course, with the definition of dyslexia, the more recent one from the International Dyslexia Association, to ground us in this work. The parts that are bolded and italicized, please you say, wherever you are. So dyslexia is a specific learning disability characterized by difficulties in word reading and or spelling. Your turn. Spelling that involves you go back real quick, John. Spelling that involves accuracy, speed, or both, and vary depending on orthography, that's the writing system. These difficulties occur along a continuum of severity and persist even with instruction that is effective for the individual's peers. Next slide. The causes of dyslexia are complex and involve combinations of genetic, neurobiological, and environmental influences that interact throughout development. Underlying difficulties with, your turn, phonological and morphological processing are common, but not universal. And your turn. Early oral language weaknesses often foreshadow literacy challenges. Next slide. Secondary consequences include reading comprehension problems and reduced reading and writing experience that, your turn, can impede growth in language, knowledge, written expression, and overall academic achievement. Psychological well-being and employment opportunities also may be affected. Although identification and targeted instruction are important at any age, language and literacy support before and during the early years of education is particularly effective. Thank you. So now that we've grounded ourselves in the definition of dyslexia and its relationship to spelling, I want you to think about spelling as not simply an outcome of dyslexia. It is also your turn, diagnostic indicator of dyslexia-related processing differences. Again, it's language written down. It's providing information to us and is an outcome often that we see with students with dyslexia. Thanks. All right, so let's talk about spelling. Next slide. All right, wherever you are, turn to a partner or someone sitting next to you and just give them a thumbs up or thumbs down if you've heard the statement before. Reading and spelling are two sides of the same coin. Oops, go back, please. Go back one real quick. Also, give them a thumbs up if you agree or you disagree, or maybe you're neutral with that statement. So quickly, wherever you are, it's a thumbs up, I agree with that statement. I'm a little neutral on that, or thumbs down, I don't. All right. Now that you've done that, not yet on the slide, John, but let's do some reading together. So on this slides coming up, you're going to see some words. And as quickly as you can read them, I'm going to ask John to go to the next slide. All right. So are you ready to read these words? Let's see if there's sight words. Remember, a sight word is any word that you can read instantaneously and effortlessly. So ready? Here we go. Ready? Let's go. Ready? John? Accommodate. Next one. Fuchsia. Next one. Narcissistic. Next one. And onomatopoeia. Next one. All right. So if reading and spelling are two sides of the same coin, what I'm guessing from my friends out there in Michigan is that you had a 4 out of 4 when you read them, that you read them instantaneously and effortlessly. So if reading and spelling are two sides of the same coin, you'll have a 4 out of 4 when you also spell them. And that's why I ask you to grab a piece of paper, or pencil, pen, or even your phone if you want to do it in notes. So are you ready? We're not going to go to any other slides yet, John. We're just going to stay right here. All right. So the first word that you read instantaneously and effortlessly was accommodate. What word, everyone? Repeat it after me. Accommodate. I have 6 grandchildren. That's true. And whenever they come to my house, I always accommodate them. What word, everyone? Accommodate. All right. Pick up your pencil, pen, or your phone, whatever you're using to spell this word, and spell that. I'll give you about 10, I think you can do it probably about 10 seconds. Okay, next word was fuchsia. What word, everyone? Say it with me. Fuchsia. Fuchsia is a beautiful color. What word, everyone? Fuchsia. All right, now pick up your pen, pencil, or writing what you're writing with and spell the word fuchsia. Again, probably about 10 seconds. All right, next word, narcissistic. Say that with me. Narcissistic. Let's make it even easier a little bit. Let's clap out those syllables. Narcissistic. To be narcissistic is not an enviable trait. What word, everyone? Narcissistic. Again, your turn to spell narcissistic. Okay. All right, last but not least, the big one, onomatopoeia. Say that with me, onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is a literary device. What word, everyone? Onomatopoeia. All right, now pick up your pen or pencil and spell that word onomatopoeia. Okay. All right. Let's see how you did. So if reading and spelling are the same side of the coin, you're going to have a 4 out of 4 here too. All right, here we go. Ready? John, you can move forward to the first one was accommodate, and then you can check your spelling. All right, next slide, fuchsia. This is usually when I hear groans if I were with you face to face. Next word was narcissistic. And last but not least, onomatopoeia. Okay, so I don't know if Kate can tell me in the chat, if you could put in the chat how many words you spelled correctly. You can go to the next slide. There we go. So how did you do? Did you have a 4 out of 4 with this as well? My guess is if it's similar to when I've been able to do this face-to-face, very rarely, if ever, have I had, oh, so, Kate said 1 out of 4. It's tricky, isn't it? So what makes that so tricky? If we say reading and spelling the same side of a coin, why did you have a 4 out of 4 with reading and maybe less than a 4 out of 4 with the spelling? So let's find out why that might be the case. Thanks for that information, Kate. Appreciate that. Next slide. So yeah, so not really probably 2 sides of the same coin. However, next slide, John. Learning to read and spell, spelling and reading they do your turn, build and rely on the same mental representations of a word. Knowing the spelling of a word makes a representation of it sturdy and accessible to fluent reading. So one thing I want kind of resonating in your ear while we're doing this presentation and also afterward is when you're teaching spelling, you are teaching reading. So let's say that all together. When you're teaching spelling, you are teaching reading. It's difficult oftentimes to be effective and efficient with our time as teachers, but truly when you're teaching spelling, you are teaching and benefiting reading. Just kind of showed you right now, when we read a word, it doesn't necessarily mean we can spell it, but certainly in most cases, if not all of them, if we can spell a word, we can read a word. So we're benefiting reading when we're teaching spelling. All right, next slide. Thank you. So what allows students to both read words by sight and accurately spell words when they write? That is, everyone, say it with me, orthographic mapping. Say that with me, orthographic mapping. Next slide. So what is orthographic mapping? It's what allows students to both, your turn, read words by sight and spell words when they write. Thanks, John. Next one. All right, orthographic mapping involves, your turn, the formation of letter-sound connections to bond the spellings, pronunciations, and meanings of specific words in memory, and that would be long-term memory. It explains how children, your turn, learn to read words by sight, to spell words from memory, and to acquire vocabulary words from print. The orthographic mapping process. This is something we facilitate in our instruction. We don't teach orthographic mapping, we facilitate it. It's something students have to do. They have to bond the spelling to the pronunciation of the word and its meaning, all three. Okay, so John, next one. So think about it this way in terms of this triangle. We love triangles in education, MTSS as well, that we're bonding the spelling, the orthography, and the phonology and the meaning for instant and automatic retrieval. It's to store it in long-term memory. The reason we need to store it in long-term memory is so when we read and spell it, we do it effortlessly, accurately, and automatically to reduce the working memory and cognitive load so we can focus on reading, the comprehension of reading when we're reading books or text, and also in spelling when we're writing. It doesn't overload our working memory so that we cannot write as we would like to in terms of our oral language represented in spoken written language. All right, next one, John. I think about it this way, and I have for a few years. I woke up in the middle of the night and thought about those three components of language: phonology, orthography, and meaning, which can be, of course, morphology as well, as a three-legged stool. So when we're spelling, we need to know how to represent that in the written form, orthography, how we pronounce those graphemes, and then bond its meaning. If any one of those legs is missing, right? If we don't know how to pronounce the word, if we don't know how to spell the word, but we know how to decode it, we know how to bond the spelling and the pronunciation, but we don't know what it means, we do not have a strong lexical representation or a high quality lexical representation, as Perfetti would say. So those words that you could read accurately and automatically, you had a less a strong or sturdy representation of that word in orthography, right? So we want these strong, sturdy language systems independently contributing to reading and spelling, but also interdependently. So any one of those legs pulled out, we have some work to do. All right, next slide. So what makes spelling more difficult? It's a production skill, where reading is a recognition skill. So spelling requires your turn, complete and accurate word memories. Reading words in contrast is possible, your turn, even if word memories are not fully specified. And again, that's what we found out with those words that you could read instantaneously and effortlessly, but you could not spell. In order to spell, you need complete and accurate word memory stored in long-term memory. And so again, when you're teaching spelling, you are teaching reading. Next slide. There it is. Now you get to see it too. So both, you've heard me say it many times phonologically, and now you're seeing it orthographically, and definitely with meaning throughout this presentation. All right, so why do students struggle with spelling with dyslexia? Well, four main reasons, of course. First would be phonological processing weaknesses. We have a morphophonemic language. We spell by both meaning and sound. And if we have a weakness in phonology, the ability to hear, analyze, manipulate, generate phonemes, the individual sounds within our language, we will have difficulty with both reading and with spelling. And it will deter or diminish the orthographic mapping process, the process where we store words in long-term memory. Also, morphophonemic means we spell by both meaning and sound. It is a weakness as well in morphology. And we know we have these downstream effects when we are not reading and spelling, and we have a weakness, we have a limited exposure. Back to Stanovich's Matthew effect, right? We see fewer words, we read fewer words, we spell fewer words, and it makes the gap wider. And back to the definition of IDA in terms of dyslexia, we want to intervene early in a very specific way with instruction and intervention to deter that limited exposure. All right, next slide. All right, your turn again on the bulleted parts. Spelling is one of the, your turn, clearest indicators of dyslexia-related language processing disorders, right, or orders. We want to make sure that we're looking at students' spelling as well as their ability to read words. All right, next slide. Spelling is not simply an outcome of dyslexia. It is a diagnostic indicator of dyslexia-related processing differences. So your turn for those two. All right. Next slide. All right, so let's look at spelling through a multi-tiered system of support. All right, so we're going to start a course where we have tier 1 instruction. This is where our students spend most of their time in instruction, and we want to ensure that all systems, of course, are aligned with their instruction, with their common language and how they're describing their instruction, and we begin that with, of course, with tier 1. All right, so what does that mean? Next slide, thanks. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So of course it means that we are engaging in all the language systems. Often what we've been doing with the language systems, we have been isolating. And so if there's anything else that I would like you to take back with you in terms of sayings that are stuck in your head between what, instead of just when we're teaching spelling, we're teaching reading, is to integrate, don't isolate. Say that with me. Integrate, Don't isolate. The slides came off a little bit here in terms of the, sorry about the phonology over there with that Y, but let's talk about these language systems that must be integrated. The first is phonology. And so again, you have the bolded parts, which is the study of how sounds function in languages. Orthography is our conventional spelling system of a language, how we correctly spell, ortho meaning correct, if you ever paid for an orthodontist, and graph meaning letters, how we correctly represent those sounds, those phonemes with graphemes correctly. Then, of course, semantics, which is the study of meaning in language, right? Again, these three are that three-legged stool that I talked to you about. Syntax, the rules governing sentence structure, or how words function and how they're organized in our language. Morphology is the study of word formation and structure. The morphemes are the individual meaningful units. Pragmatics is how we use language and it affects meaning, oftentimes socially, how our language changes. And then discourse is, of course, studying language beyond the sentence level. So this is structured literacy in all the language systems. Oftentimes, you'll hear Marianne Wolf, the dyslexia researcher, refer to this as POSSUM: phonology, orthography, semantics, syntax, understanding, and meaning. All of these must be integrated. All right. All right, next slide. The International Dyslexia Association, of course, also compels us to engage in structured literacy that is integrated. You can see this in the wheel here on the right, where we have each of these language systems that I just referred to as independent contributors, but you see them overlapping as interdependent. And then to the right, how do we teach it directly, explicitly, systematically, and cumulatively? And then, of course, to the far right, you see the integration of both the what, the language systems, and the how. All right, next slide. This is on the Padlet. I strongly encourage you to watch this little boy. His name is Akash, and he is at the Script Spelling Bee. And you'll notice if you've ever watched the Script Spelling Bee, that when a student comes up to the microphone, they ask a lot of questions. And they ask, can you pronounce it? And I can't ask how you can spell it, but they ask about its meaning. They ask for it to be in a sentence. They ask about its grammar, its part of speech. They even ask about often its etymology, or where the word originated from. That also provides details in terms of how the word will be spelled. So please take a moment to watch that. You'll really love it. All right, next one. All right, so how does Louisa Moats inform us how we should be teaching spelling in Tier 1? Here are 6 steps from a book around structured literacy that was edited by Louise Bear-Swerling. Dr. Moats did the chapter on spelling. Of course, we begin with a quick review of what's been previously learned, because we want to have that distributed and cumulative learning. And what you're going to see with 2 is oral language, right? That phoneme awareness at the syllable, morpheme, and word identification level, phonology. Then the correct spelling, concept of correspondence, orthography, guided practice, analyzing those words and constructing them. And then, of course, practice, but not the practice that sometimes we find with spelling, where we get the word list on Monday, 10 words, we memorize them during the week, and then we take the test on Friday and we forget them on Monday and afterwards, right? So we need practice that's informed by language, which you can see in those earlier steps. And then when there is error, of course, we want to have immediate corrective feedback. We don't want these spelling words stored in memory incorrectly. When you have a word that's spelled incorrectly, stored in long-term memory, you can never take that out. You just have to learn the correct spelling and override that, right? I don't know if you're like me, but oftentimes when I'm spelling, I'll write it down and think, does that look right? I have to see it, right? I'm matching it to my long-term memory of that word. And then, of course, you want to assess, provide corrective feedback where necessary, and also reteach as necessary. So 6 steps from the amazing Dr. Louisa Moats, who's been studying spelling many, many, many years. And thanks to her for that. Next slide, please. All right, so when I visit schools, oftentimes spelling is not taught at all. For some reason, I don't know, spelling and handwriting have taken a back seat in some places. And I strongly encourage you to, if that's happening wherever you are, to please return to those foundational skills. And of course, you want to teach in a very systematic way, which means we teach from least complex to most complex. Say that with me. Least complex to most complex. Do it with me. Least complex to most complex, and most frequent spelling to least frequent spelling. Do that with me. Most frequent spelling to least frequent spelling, right? In a very systematic way. And here is just a snip of a scope and sequence from the amazing Jones Adita and their Keys to Literacy. So you do need a logical scope and sequence when teaching spelling. Again, least complex to most complex, most frequent spelling to least frequent spelling. Okay. All right. Next slide. All right. So we do a lot of assessment and education, but one assessment that I don't see enough of, especially universally, is a spelling inventory. This would be conducted 3 times a year, universally, the same time that you do your other screenings, Acadians, Ames Web, Dibbles, whatever you're using in terms of determining if there is risk where your students are universally. You would also include a spelling inventory. Here's the thing with spelling inventories. They can be done relatively quickly in whole group. Maybe 10 minutes of your instructional time. So not onerous in terms of the instructional time for the assessment. And they can be done whole group. Of course, you want to make sure that kids cannot be looking at each other or copying off each other. Here's the thing, though. The analysis is so rich and robust, and it informs so much about our instruction and provides detailed information, even beyond those universal screeners that are typically done to inform our instruction and intervention. If you're not using a spelling inventory yet, please consider doing so. This is also going to be like my cheerleading for spelling inventories for you. All right, so next slide. Okay, if spelling requires complete word knowledge, your turn. Spelling errors can reveal exactly where the language system is breaking down. That's why I love spelling. I said for a long time, if you met me, I would say my name is Pam Spelling Kastner, because I was so obsessed and still am with spelling, right? I'm sure as an educator, there's certain things you get really obsessed with literacy. And spelling has been an obsession of mine for quite a while now. But because when I look at a student's spelling, correct or an error, it tells me what they know about language. And in particular, when there's a spelling error, I know what I need to do as a teacher. It's staring me right in the face as I look at that spelling error. So it will for you as well. All right, next slide. All right, so a qualitative spelling inventory is a list of words. Again, it goes from least complex to most complex and most frequent spelling to least frequent spelling. It really reduces working memory compared to a writing sample, because if you're waiting until kids were spelling in a certain way with a certain pattern, it might be quite some time. So it's very efficient. It informs our instruction. It can be formative as well as summative. And typically, it's administered 3 times a year, along with your other universal screeners. And of course, for students who are at risk, you would progress monitor more frequently on those skills that you're teaching the student that have been revealed from the spelling inventory. All right, next slide. All right, here are some typical screeners. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you, I was a national letters trainer for many, many years, as I'm sure many of you are out there or have taken letters in Michigan. So I'm going to be sharing that one, the K-2 basic screener. Of course, they have an advanced one. There are some others on the screen. I do have some asterisks next to words their way, the developmental spelling inventory there. I am a fan of that spelling inventory. It does go from least complex to most complex and has spelling features. But the program itself, I would ask you to really look at that and determine if you feel that it is direct, explicit, and systematic enough. All right, so that's why the asterisk there. So, all right, next slide. All right, again, it's ordered from least complex to most complex, and you're seeing that right there on the slide. right? So we start with CVC, short vowels, digraphs, blends, inflectional endings, suffixing rules, and all the way down to multisyllabic words. All right, next slide. So why assess spelling? Student spelling errors, your turn. Provide teachers with insights as to the progress of students' understandings of the patterns of language. Next slide. There we go. All right. So again, the preparation is not onerous. Students need to sit in a way that they cannot copy from one another. Maybe they have little folders around each other. You want to use numbered paper, and you want a pen or pencil without an eraser, because kids will, you want to know what their first attempt is, and you don't want them putting holes in their paper, right? So similar to how I did the 4 words that we had earlier, I say the word, right? And you want the students saying that word so that they phonologically have it in their mouth. You use in a sentence, right? So that they have meaning embedded with that as well. Then you repeat the word, and then you're just quiet. And you let them spell the word just as I did with you. You do not want to exaggerate certain phonemes, because it's likely then you will schwa. So say if the word is bug, you might say bug. So articulation of phonemes is very, very important that teachers do accurately in their instruction, because if you schwa, your kids schwa, and it will show up in their spelling. So sometimes I'm in a school and kids are spelling cat, C-A-T-U, and the teachers cannot understand why. And then when we really focus on those articulatory gestures and pronunciations accurately, we notice that sometimes they're saying the t with like a t. And so both spoken language and written language are expressive forms of language. And so what comes out your mouth, the phonemes, is likely to show up in your spelling. All right, so just a little caution there. All right, next slide. All right, so this is we're going to have some fun with 2 students who are in grade 2. Focusing on the spelling inventory. So basically what I'm doing in the time that we have left is I am modeling for you what I want you to do when you go back to your schools with spelling inventories. All right. So if you're not doing them, please do them. And if you are doing them, you would want to analyze them in this way. If you were with me, we were doing this very interactively together, and we will as much as we can in terms of the webinar. But you shouldn't, if not possible, please do this with learned colleagues, your grade level, your reading specialists, your coaches, your administrators, whomever. It's better to do this in collaboration and analysis. And it's also, of course, going to inform small group instruction, whole group instruction. So we'll look at that in terms of the tiered support as well. So next slide. All right, so here's how we're just going to start out. All right, we're just going to look at them globally from a 30,000-foot view. There's going to be student 1 and student 2. All right, so I'm going to ask Kate to tell me what I see in the chat in a moment. All right, so all you're going to do is you're going to be thinking about student 1, student 2, and in the chat, when I ask you, not right away, I want to give you thinking time and reflection time. You're going to put in the chat who you think the stronger reader is, just from looking at these spelling inventories. You can also, while you're looking at these, consider strengths and weaknesses, but we won't have time to put those strengths and weaknesses in the chat, but I do want you to practice that. So here we go. Next slide. All right, so it's a think then chat. If we're in your watch parties, yeah, do this together. Next slide. All right, there they are, student 1 and student 2. This is the beginning of 2nd grade. For both of these students. All right. So I'm going to put up I have my phone beside me. I'm just going to do 30 seconds here. And then I'm going to ask you. So you have 30 seconds to review. All right. You're on the clock. Okay. That went fast, right? All right, so it's going to be like a waterfall. If you've been on Zooms, you've seen that where everyone kind of at the same time. And so who's the stronger reader if you had to guess? Again, we're never looking at just one measure, but in just an overview, who would you want to, who would you think would be more at risk? I'm sure you already know that, but who is the stronger reader, you think, in the chat? Everybody, 1, 2, 3, show me. All right, and Kate, you said everyone. So we have consensus, right? Everyone said student 1 is likely a stronger reader. And see, the reason to do this kind of globally initially is to show you how powerful spelling is, right? Right away, if these students, if I'm the second grade teacher and I'm looking at the spelling inventories, I am more concerned, of course, about student 2. I'm looking at data, triangulating data for all my students, but this is a measure that's giving me information for student 2 that there's likely risk here, right? It's showing up in the spelling inventory. It's visible language. It is language written down, right? So next slide. All right, so back to, right, the orthographic mapping process. We can tell that student 1 has more words stored in long-term memory for instant and automatic retrieval because they can spell most of them, the ones that we saw spelled accurately, they stored them, right? But we also want to think about it in this way as well. Not all spelling errors are the same, right? Those spelling errors are telling us something what students know about phonology, orthography, and meaning, or maybe all 3 of them, right? Okay, next slide. Okay. All right, there you go. Not all spelling errors. Your turn, say it with me. Not all spelling errors mean the same thing. Effective instruction begins with diagnosing the source of the error. So the spelling errors, along with other data, of course, are going to inform our instruction and our intervention. So what might that look like? All right. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right. So that slide got cut off a little bit. Sorry about that. But we're going to be looking at them through those 3 legs, right? The 3 language systems: phonology, orthography, meaning, morphology as well, right? So first thing we're going to look for are all the sounds represented. These are the questions that should guide you. So for example, if a student spelled the word jump, jup, all the sounds are not represented. It's showing me there's a phonological missing component there. And we see this often with blends at the end, especially when we have a vowel sound next to a nasal sound, the sound, right? Or an ending blend there. So there's an example of a phonological error. Are there phonological confusions? It could be the word truck spelled as truck, which is an allophonic variation. When phonemes are next to each other, they become co-articulated and can become confusing, right? Are they making the basic letter sound connections made? Is the spelling correct? Are there spelling conventions that are incorrect? For example, bridge, we know that no English word ends in J, right? And so if we spell bridge, B-R-I-J, we know that there's a spelling convention that the student has not yet solidified. And then are the meaningful parts represented? So if there's a morphological error, this would be a common one you might see, especially because stopped, the ending sound is a t, but we know morphemes have stable spellings. That's why it's extremely important that we teach morphology from the beginning. That way, when a student is writing a word like stopped, and they're even kindergarten, which I taught many, many years, I taught them that, you know, when the word is telling us it happened in the past, we spell that with an ED, even though the pronunciation shifts, right, depending on the phoneme sound at the end of the base word, right? In this case, it's an unvoiced sound. And so the ED is pronounced unvoiced as well with the T, right? And if it was bugged, it would be a voice sound. And they might spell it B-U-G-D, right? Because that ending sound bug has a voice sound, the G. And so there's alignment there, right, between the spelling and the morphology. So we want to make sure that we're teaching morphology right from the beginning. All right, next slide. All right, these are the 5 questions that are going to guide us. And I do want to call out, and I will at the end as well, later on in your presentations, you will hear from the amazing Erin Amy. And Aaron and Dr. Tamara Eisenberg and I have been all obsessed with spelling for quite a while. And this presentation we have collaborated on for many, many, many years together. So calling out her, her brilliance as well in terms of these questions in this presentation. So these are the 5 questions that you should have right beside you when you're looking at spelling, right? A spelling inventory, right? So these are the questions too that will guide you. Are all the sounds represented? Are there any phonological confusions? Basic letter connections made, spelling conventions, and meaningful parts represented. All right, next slide. All right, so again, you're seeing these 3 lenses that we're going to look through spelling inventories for the rest of the time that we have together. All right, next slide. All right, so we begin with phonology. Phonology really truly is the base. Again, you can see spelling errors that have phonological, orthographic, and morphological errors in them. But if students cannot segment the sounds within words accurately, they will never represent it orthographically. Remember, both spoken and written language are reproductive forms of language. So this is like the base of where we need to focus our instruction as well if it's a phonological error. So we're going to check to see are all the sounds represented and are there any confusions. All right, next slide. All right, so with your watch party partner, wherever you are, let's think about the word champ. Ready? So let's tap sounds. Ch, ah, p. So there are 4 phonemes in the word champ. And the student has spelled the word champ, C-H-A-P. Are all the sounds represented in this word? Everyone can put in the chat. And I think Kate is going to say, everyone's going to say, what are they saying, Kate? Is there a phonological sound missing in this word? I bet yes. I'm still waiting. There are the sound is missing in the word champ, right? So we just see chap there. So we're missing that that nasal sound within the word champ. So there is a phonological error here that we have to address, and they're showing us that, right? All right, there you go. All right, next slide. All right, now let's look at these 2 students again. Now, we started out by looking at them globally. Let's look at them now through the lens of phonology, all right? So here we go. We said, of course, they were very different. We said that student 1, likely a stronger reader, definitely a stronger speller than student 2, right? So let's look at them phonologically. Next slide. All right, so we're just looking right now at them at the very beginning, things we would do in kindergarten, early first grade as a review maybe, but short vowel sounds, CVC. Phonologically the same or different? What do you think? Put it in the chat. I'm not going to give you a lot of time for that. Okay, maybe 10 seconds. All right. All right, so same or different? All right, Kate. What are you seeing? Same or different? All same, yeah. So we see that both student 1 and student 2, they're doing pretty well with the short vowel CVCs. We do have a backwards P here and NAT. We're a little worried about that with student, but also I can tell, guess what? I work with this school. Can you tell they're teaching handwriting? You can tell too in the spelling inventory if handwriting is being taught. So they look a lot the same. Next slide. So we're good on CVCs. We're going to go right down that scope and sequence. Next up, again, this is going to be a think then chat. Oh gosh, with not being able to transition in the slides, guess what, friends? You're going to get the answers right away. Oh, that's a shame a little bit. So you're going to please go back. We'll just do that. So go back a slide then, John. because they won't be able to do it. All right, so let's do it together then. All right, and you can see the answer to the side there, right? When we start looking at blends, right? And when we start looking at VCE, which we'll see here in a minute, we see student 1 and student 2 are very different. All right, so I want you to look over to the left at student 1. You can see the student 1 is representing what's the stone, as we have the ST there, and we look to student 2. We see blends. We see the internal blend in stone, the st missing, correct? And we see, when we see scrape, we may see an orthographic error for student 1 and scrape, right, with that K, but the sound is logical, right? The spelling is logical in the sense of represents that sound, K does. That's an orthographic error. It's not a phonological error, right? But we do see some concerns with student 2. If you go back and forth between the two, so I'll give you like maybe 20 seconds. I'll talk you through it, but I really want you looking closely at the screen and seeing how these students are now starting to differ. So phonologically with short vowel CVCs, they look a lot alike. But when we start looking at them turn further down this scope and sequence with blends, we see them starting to pull apart, right? So we see certainly that student 2 is going to need more support with internal sounds within words, representing them. The student is not even representing them within a plausible spelling. They are not representing them at all. So to the left, you'll see that student 1 blends are secured. You know, all sounds are represented, but student 2, not all sounds are represented. So what are we going to need to do about that? This is what I mean, how the spelling is going to inform your instruction and your intervention right away. We can see with student 2, they're going to need some support with individual phonemes and separating those sounds out. So that's going to be phoneme grapheme mapping, right? For sure. All right, next slide. This would be a think then chat if we were able to do the slides as I wanted to, but that's okay. Here we go. Next slide. All right. So that's another student. This is not student 1 or student 2. And I want you to take, and again, I'm going to give you, I think, 20 seconds with this one. If this was a spelling inventory that you saw from a student, which of these words would concern you phonologically? So let's say that you're just going to do highlight the ones that had a phonological concern. And then in a moment, I'll show that to you. I'll let John move that slide forward, but not just yet. 20 seconds. Which ones? Which ones were you phonologically? Okay, let's see. All right, John, can you move the slide ahead? Oh, okay, all of those, right? They're missing a phoneme or phonemes represented in spelling. So we know this student has a lot of phonological challenges. All right, so this is one way too that you can look at your spelling inventories and code them. All right, so if you were doing that, that's what this would look like. All right, next slide. All right, so what do we need to do? Now we know there's a concern. Remember, it's right there smack dab looking at us. So, right, it's visible language to inform our instruction and our intervention. So phonologically, we know we need to work with the student, right? All right, so what should we do? Next slide. We want to have an instructional routine, right, for spelling. If you are familiar with Orrin Gillingham, oftentimes you'll hear simultaneous oral spelling. Here's an example, and it's very similar to what I did when we were spelling those 4 words. But when I'm teaching too, I always say, watch my mouth, watch my mouth. So I say the word, students repeat the word. We want that word in their mouth. We want to make sure that they have phonologically encoded it correctly because it's going to support their spelling of it, correct? Right? And then we're going to map those sounds on our fingers. So back to champ, ch, a, p, right? And then some students are going to also need to move chips or something tangible, because phonemes are elusive. They need a tangible, concrete representation of that too, right? That can be our fingers, that can be as we're sliding them into the boxes. And then of course, we're going to spell that word. We might even break it down more. We would say first sound ch, and spell ch, right? And we, depends on the amount of scaffolding that students are going to need, but we're going from spoken language to written language, right? And we're telling them a sentence in the next one. Here's also why I've used this one, and not to just ask you to be critical consumers of your instructional materials too. The one piece that's missing, if you go to the next slide, John, is meaning. Right? We want to have the word in a sentence. Also, friends, if you're doing the heart word routine, that is something I'm seeing in a lot of heart word routines that's missing. It's bonding the phonology and the orthography, but it's not right there, those two, but it's not bonding the meaning. So we always want to bond the meaning. As you heard in my bio, I used to be the state lead at Patton in Pennsylvania, and our team, when we did phoneme grapheme mapping, we always embedded the meaning in a sentence, because we want to bond all three of those. We want high quality lexical representations, and we want to facilitate the orthographic mapping process. So always be critical consumers and be thinking about that integration of language. And this one does that, and very similar, but it's embedding the meaning. So next slide. Also, too, we know from the research of Linnea Airy the importance of articulatory gestures. Many of you likely maybe have not sound walls, I hope, but sound spelling walls, showing how the sounds of phonemes are represented in spelling. It is also really vital that, if students are having trouble with these articulatory gestures, that you're teaching them directly, explicitly, and systematically. And always, I say, your SLP should be, in addition to the secretary, principal, and custodian, your BFF, because they know so much about language. So please be teaching those articulatory gestures correctly and with mirrors for students. That will help them in terms of their phoneme challenges. Okay, next slide. And if you're focusing on vowels, please be aware of how to teach them systematically. We want to teach vowel sounds that are similar, widely apart. So watch my mouth. E, ah. So you'll very rarely see a student make an error between the word Pete and pot, because phonemes are sounds and articulatory gestures. They're feeling what's happening in their mouth. Remember, what comes out your mouth concretely is likely going to come out your pencil or pen. But we often do see errors between Pete and pit, because look at the articulatory gestures that are different. Pete, pit, not very much. Right? So we don't want to confuse kids. We want to keep them widely apart. All right. And word chains are your friend, right? They help students become aware of the sounds, but also those minimal pairs, those differences within sound when they get to that level. All right. So next slide. All right. So we briefly looked at phonology. Now we're on to orthography. What are we on to, everybody? Orthography, the language system orthography. Remember, the questions that are guiding us are basic letter sound connections made. And are there any are the conventions in place? All right, so here we go. Next one, let's do one together. This word is stone, right? And the correct spelling is to the left. All right. I do not have a problem with this word phonologically. All sounds are represented. S, t, o, n, by plausible, but not correct. So friends, I'm not given time. I'm just going to tell you, this one concerns me orthographically. The student is using a letter name to represent a long vowel spelling, the VCE pattern. So this word is an example of a orthographic error. All right, next slide. All right, so we're going to go back to this, the think then chat. So we looked at our students, student 1 and student 2. They were very different phonologically. They diverged, especially as we went further down the spelling inventory. Now let's look at them orthographically. Same kids, student 1, student 2. All right. All right. So let's look at vowel teams. All right. Now, again, 20 seconds looking. You're going to say same or different to Kate, and she's going to tell me. All right. Same or different? They were very different phonologically. Let's look at them orthographically. more the same, or more different? 20 seconds, and then I'll ask you to answer. Okay. Okay. All right, Kate. Yes, what are you seeing? Yeah, thank you. I see a lot of same coming into the chat, right? So this is the same inventory, right? We're looking at the same two students. So this is what I mean, how powerful spelling inventories are. We can be looking at them through these different lenses and see where need is, right? So very different phonologically, but boy, we're starting to see a lot of sameness between these two students. We see them using a letter name to represent a long vowel sound, right? So it's telling us something about potentially the instruction or the curriculum, right? It's leading to more questions, but regardless, it's telling us that they are not applying long vowel patterns that have been taught, right? Now, this is why that scope and sequence is so important, because we don't expect students to spell what has not been taught yet. And if you do not have a scope and sequence, and you're not teaching it, and sometimes I go to schools where they're not teaching it yet, it's very difficult to hold kids accountable for spellings that have not been taught, right? But we do see a sameness here. So next slide, when we're looking at those patterns, right? So we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so again, this would have been a thinking thing, and then we would have put in the student 1 and student 2 answer there on the left. But guess what? You lucked out today to get all the answers right from the beginning. Right. So when we look at the silent VCE pattern, again, we see very similar responses where the students are. We still see student 2 is missing some of those blends there, no doubt, in stone, right? And scrape is not spelled orthographically correctly, but we see this pattern over and over again where the students are using letter names to represent letter sounds. And that's really when we see students in a partial alphabetic phase. When we think about Linnea Aries, phases of word reading and writing here, right? We're seeing it. It's blatant, right? I know what to teach, right? Okay, next slide. All right, this is another Think Then Chat. All right. We really try to keep you engaged. So next slide. All right, so we looked at, this is a different student. We looked at a different student in terms of phonological lens. Right now, I want you to look at this student, and I want you to think about which words you're looking through the orthographic lens here, the conventional correct spellings. Which ones would concern you? Again, I'll give you 20 seconds, and then we'll show the answer. All right, 20 seconds. All right, and then I'll ask Kate to tell me what, well, we'll just go to the next slide. Okay. All right, next slide. And these are the ones that should have stood out to you, right? So we see, for example, let me just call out the word like goat, right? That's a plausible spelling, right? Using the VCE pattern there to represent that long out spelling, but it should be the vowel team OA. So that's an orthographic error. Beat. This is why it's so important to have a sentence when you are engaging in spelling, because of course, we have B-E-E-T and B-E-A-T sound the same, of course, but have different meanings in spellings. All right. So this student, of course, we see not as much of a concern phonologically. We do see plausible representations with graphemes, but they're not the correct spelling in many cases, right? All right, so next slide. So what are some best practices for orthography? Okay, next slides. All right, so it's always going to go to teach it, right? So if the pattern is missing, you have to teach it. Right. And then we want, once we've taught it, we want lots of practice, right? Oftentimes when we teach students and they learn it, but they don't hold it and maintain it, right? It's because there has not been enough practice with that target skill or types of words. Once they've had enough practice where they have learned that pattern, we also want to compare and contrast it with minimal pairs so they know how to spell these words correctly with the correct spellings. For example, like ray and rain, like we know we spell by position. That's one of the principles of spelling, right? So in the word ray, we have a long A spelling at the end, typically spelled with an AY, and in rain, AI is the long A is spelled with an AI because position, middle of a word or syllable or the beginning, it's likely to be spelled with an AI. Those need to be practiced. Also, please, when you're doing your phonics instruction, do not skip dictation. Sometimes we get so busy that it's dictation that we don't make time for. Dictation is very important. And of course, if we taught a pattern, we wanted to assess on novel words. All right, so next slide. Certainly, and we talked about the importance of word chains and building word chains. Highly, highly effective skills in building those chains, and where we're just changing one phoneme, grapheme correspondence, and paying attention to the internal structure of the word. We know the blending boards from UFly can be very helpful there, as well as other types of blending boards to do that. Next slide. And decodable text. Don't forget decodable text so that they can see these spelling patterns in text that aligns. What makes a text decodable is the reader, what their reader has been taught previously, what they know, and what they are accurate with, but yet need to be automatic with, that they might have learned in isolation and a list, and they can do so, but can they do it when it is in connected text? Right? So you want to apply those skills in reading and in spelling. So don't forget decodable text, right? We want those words stored in long-term memory for instant access. Next slide. All right, last but not least, morphology, of course, is the meaningful parts of our language, and we're looking to see are all the meaningful parts of the word included in the spelling, okay? All right, next slide. All right, so here are some examples where we see we have some morphological errors, right? So we see in the word walked, even on the right here, we have a phonological spelling, W-O-C-T, walked. So we have some concerns there orthographically, no doubt about it, but also there's morphological concerns. The student has not applied the ED spelling. Remember, morphemes have stable spellings. So we want to be teaching morphology right from the beginning. All right, so next slide. Again, this is going to be a thinking. Go ahead. All right, so again, we're going to go back to student. Next slide. All right, we're going to look at student 1 and student 2. I want you to look at inflectional endings. All right, so here's the same students all the way through. Student 1, student 2, student 1, student 2, different phonologically, more alike orthographically, and now when we see them morphologically, more the same or more different. When you're looking at inflectional endings, those affixes, the ing and the eds. All right, so again, I know there's a 20-second delay, so you have 20 seconds and I'll look in the chat, same or different. And you can put in the chat right away, that way Kate will be able to tell me. Okay. All right, I'm watching for Kate. Okay. What are you seeing, Kate? Yes, different. Everyone said different. Yes. Right. So same, they were different phonologically, same orthographically, and now we're back to different. See how you can learn so much by looking at these spelling inventories through these 3 lenses to really inform your instruction and intervention. So next slide. All right, there you go. So we can see how they are very different. Next slide. All right, so inflectional endings are partially in place for student one, still need some work, but certainly we definitely need to do more significant work with student two in a lot of areas, but certainly also morphologically. Next slide. All right, so I think then chat. Again, next slide. All right, so which of the words in this spelling inventory, again, a different student, would concern you morphologically? All right. And again, probably like, I'll just give you like 10 seconds. There's not as many here. Tell your partner, tell your watch party, words that are standing out to you. Okay, and then next slide. Yeah, so just a few here, right? So not as much of a concern morphologically with the student, but we see other concerns there. All right, next slide. All right, so what are some best practices in morphology? Next slide. It's always going to go back to teaching it. Of course, you want to have a morphological scope and sequence too, right? From least complex to most complex. So if you look at B there, of course, we're teaching explicitly. We should always be teaching spelling and meaning together, right? We have a morphophonemic language. So Anglo-Saxon bases and inflectional suffixes. Anglo-Saxon words are the oldest etymology, the oldest in our language, right? So we want to be teaching those ed, ing, right from the beginning, from kindergarten. Even when I taught kindergarten, when I was teaching a word like cats, of course, we would talk about the sounds in cats, right? And we would map the graphemes to the phonemes. But I would say, yes, we're going to spell that with an S. But we have two morphemes here. Cat meaning the fuzzy little feline, and the S meaning more than one. It is not just representing that sound. It's also telling us more than one. We have two morphemes there. Practicing the target words in lists and sentences and text. Don't forget dictation, and talk about those affixing rules and be teaching them. And then you should be teaching what Dr. Archer calls the relatives. Teach the relatives. So if you're teaching kids to spell the word submit, talk about submission and transmit, and how we have common bases, roots, right? How they carry meaning there. So I would be teaching the relatives. You get more efficiency and effectiveness if you do it that way. So next slide. You're likely aware of morpheme matrices. As you can see to the far right here, we have the root struct, right, which means to build. And then we have prefixes and suffixes aligned, and we'll be teaching those directly, explicitly, of course. All of those affixes, prefixes, and suffixes have been taught, but we're talking about how the spelling and the meaning shift when we add these affixes, right? So morpheme matrices are a very strong tool to use for teaching morphology. Next slide. FCRR, this is cut off a little bit, but of course, this is an instructional routine. Instructional routines reduce the cognitive load for both students and teachers. So you can see there's a scripted one over here. When students are learning something new, when they're in acquisition, they need direct, explicit instruction. Also, the instructional routine should be consistent between Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, what we're calling them. Oftentimes, we cause a great deal of confusion and more of working memory load and cognitive load for students. When we do an instructional routine for, in this the case, morphology in Tier 1, using this language in these instructional practices, and then we move them into Tier 2, and we use different languages, different language, instructional language, and different instructional practices. And then even maybe in Tier 3, we need sameness in language of our instruction, how we're calling it among our peers, but with our students, but also in our instructional routines or pedagogy, right? So this is reducing the cognitive load for both teachers and students, all right? So instructional routines, highly powerful. Next slide. Again, you can see a matrix sum here too. You can see the matrix at the top, but we can also do them as sum, where we take the meaningful parts and add them together, right? DE plus CLAR plus ATION is rewritten as DECLARITON, declaration. But then, of course, we have the meaning there, right? So matrices and sums are powerful tools for morphology. Next slide. And we can go to the next slide. Then here's just another example of morpheme sums for you to have when we're done here. Next slide. And again, this is just a bigger version of what I showed you on the earlier slide in terms of these word matrices. So you can see how we build these words. Kids love doing these things. We're making them word conscious and loving words. Next word. Next slide. An amazing teacher in Pennsylvania, go Aaron Pizzo. These morphemes have been taught. Don't let this overwhelm you and think that this is just put up there. These morphemes have been taught, and the kids come in and build words and talk about their meanings. But much like you might have a sound spelling wall, you could also have a morpheme wall. And as you taught them, you can be building them. And these can be warm-ups. They can be used for instruction. Very, very powerful. And you can see also the matrices at the bottom there. And a little fly swatter sometimes. You swat a morpheme. And then the kids would correlate. Everyone does everything. No hands raised unless to ask a question if you want effective instruction. So next slide. All right, so how do you use the spelling inventory, right? So we've gone through these lenses, right? Phonology, orthography, and meaning. We've looked at them globally. We've looked at them through these lenses, and we saw our two students phonologically different, orthographically the same, morphologically different, right? So now let's look at these in a way that we can inform Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 instruction, all right? So next slide. All right, one thing for sure is if you're going to be looking at spelling inventory, these are the tools that you should have beside you. Much like Taylor Swift would say, I never, ever, ever look at a spelling inventory without having a consonant chart and vowel valley beside me, right? They are right by my side. And then, of course, the teaching tools I have are in the second column. And then what do students need? You can see to the right. Orthography, I should have a scope and sequence for spelling beside me. So I'll know, like, what should they be spelling correctly because it's been taught, right? And what might they be spelling incorrectly, yet, but it's because it has not yet been taught. And then I truly hope that you have a morpheme scope and sequence as well. You're teaching morphology, and you would also have that beside you. Right. And then these routines for orthography, remember, you want to have a SOS, simultaneous oral spelling, but you want to make sure it also embeds meaning, right? The word needs to be in a sentence to bond that. Oral language is the foundation of all literacy, right? So next slide. Those are your tools to have in your tool belt. This is how you would score a spelling inventory. This particular one, you get 1 point for each word spelled correctly, and then for each target skill as well. And then you total it. And you can see to the right the total number of scores that you could have for that particular spelling skill. And to the left column, the far left, is the actual spelling skill itself. All right, and then next slide. All right, so this is our spelling inventory from one of our students, and this is how it would be spelled, or excuse me, corrected and scored. So you can see to the side the overall score in terms of the spelling focus, as well as the words that have been spelled in total correctly. All right, so this is an individual. Next slide. All right, so what I would do with an individual skills spelling example is I would also highlight those that are have been taught and those have not been mastered. So you can see all the ones that have in orange, those are skills that have been taught and not yet mastered. And then the errors in yellow that have not yet been taught. So we can see there's been a lot. And then this school that I was working with these spelling inventories came from, what we were starting to see was a lot of things that should have been taught or were taught that kids had not mastered. So it led us to further questions around support that we could provide for teachers in terms of instruction, or to look really critically at the instruction materials, the curriculum that the teachers were using, and that scope and sequence. and the practice. Maybe it's been taught but not mastered. All right. So sometimes more questions, right? Got to get to the root cause. Next slide. All right. So planning for tiered support. Next slide. All right. So how can we use that spelling inventory to inform instruction intervention? Next slide. All right. So we're going to look next at a composite of an entire class. All right. So next slide. All right. Again, you're going to see student names kind of on that horizontal or vertical column. And then we still have to the left the skills that they've been working on. So we're looking for missing skills and patterns. We're looking for patterns, right, to inform our instruction so we can be efficient with our time. Next slide. All right. So next slide. All right. So this is one for you to look at. So they're in second grade, and we're looking at a class composite. So when you see initial consonant sounds, will that need to be taught whole group, small group, or not at all? And I'm guessing where you are, you're saying not at all. Well, we have some students we're going to follow up with. Whole group, we would not spend our time efficiently and effectively by teaching CVCs whole group. It would not be a good use of our time, right? Nor would when we're looking at short vowels down here or initial consonants, right? But certainly when we go down to vowel R, where we see so many students with errors, right? It's telling us that this is something that's going to need to be taught whole group and practiced until mastery and assessment monitoring, right? So when you're looking at a whole classroom, and I also, when I'm in schools, I look at across a grade level and across grade levels. We're looking for patterns there too. But what you're looking for when you're looking at your classroom and you're looking for patterns, you're determining, likely with your colleagues too, because hopefully you're sharing students, especially if there's a wide diversity there, what can be taught whole group efficiently and what needs to be taught small group efficiently. So the decisions that need to be made, but this is the composites can give you information in order to do so. All right, next slide. All right, so wow. That was a quick hour and 14 minutes. I think we're going to have a little time for questions. Here's what we learned today. We talked about the interdependence of language and literacy. Language is literacy. Literacy is language. That's not a Pamcaster saying. I don't know who said that, but it wasn't me. I've heard it somewhere. So if you can tell me who I can attribute to, please do. But they are interdependent. Think back to that wheel where we had, I had all of those language skills, phonology, orthography, semantics, syntax, morphology, pragmatics, discourse. All of those are independently contributing to literacy, but also interdependently. We talked about how with students with dyslexia, that spelling is also often a window into that, and also, most importantly, a window to inform our instruction and intervention. Thinking about that through a tiered system of support, what must be taught directly, explicitly to everyone, and using data to inform small group instruction and targeted instruction in tiers. I hope I've convinced you that when you're teaching spelling, you are teaching reading, and that spelling errors are visible language to inform that instruction and intervention. And then I shared some high leverage practices around common errors of phonology, orthography, and morphology meaning. Next slide. Hopefully where you are, I couldn't hear you, but you were close dropping and saying those words. If you say them, see them, speak them, you're more likely to remember them. I hope you stopped and jotted when we had those spelling, that little spelling test I gave you. All right, I hope I didn't stress you out too much on that one. All right, next slide. This is the Padlet. It has lots and lots of resources. To the far left is the handout for today, the PowerPoint presentation. There is also the spelling inventory slides, and then I also created a graphic organizer. There are some spelling open access articles there that are seminal from Dr. Moats. Etymology Online is a great resource for determining the source, where the word came from. Many of you know me probably, I don't know, but I am kind of like obsessed with Wakelets and Padlets. And so I have one, I call it the Wakelet of Wakelets. It has all 48 of my Wakelets and Padlets in one spot. So if you really want to go down a rabbit hole for literacy, that's it. And I've done 2 national presentations, podcast with Melissa and Lori Love Literacy and Anna Geiger, the Measured Mom, on spelling. And so if you want to listen and learn more, that would be a great resource, I think. And then please don't miss that video of that cute little boy. And it really, I love it because he in order to spell, he really wants to know all those layers of language, and Akash is 6. So if Akash can understand the importance of the integration of language and how important it is, so can we. All right. And next slide is the QR code that takes you to that Padlet with all those resources. The password is very tricky. It's spelling with a capital S. So we'll linger on there just for a moment. And I have to apologize to Kate that I did not, I am so sorry that I realized this morning that I did not put the exit code on a slide. So I do apologize. You're going to have to put that into the chat. And I am very sorry about that. So there we go.
Not a problem.
I'm so sorry about that. I was like, oh,
you have a lot going on. You were just presenting last week in New Orleans, so you are good. So Jessica and a few other people they'll go ahead and pin the closing code for everybody to see.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing information. What I'm hearing you say is that spelling is important. Is that accurate? Did I get that from that presentation?
Yes. If I had a soapbox, I'd be standing on it.
I love it. I love it that you're standing on it, because it does really give us so much information about students and what they need. And so we have a short amount of time, but I do have a lot of questions about spelling inventories, and then pertaining to certain grade levels and relevance at secondary. So I'm just going to ask a few in the short amount of time that we have, and then we'll go from there. So some of the first couple questions that were coming in were, if you're using spelling as that screener 3 times a year, up to what grade level would you continue to give a spelling inventory?
To be honest with you, if you would ask me this several years ago, I might have said elementary or maybe early middle school, but universally, definitely. I'm sorry, can I take a little sip here?
Sure, I can start singing. No,
universally, definitely, I would say elementary. Universally, elementary. Whenever we're doing those other screenings, I would do it universally. If you had students in middle school that we know what I hear and everyone's hearing across the country is our upper elementary, middle school, and high school teachers are really, really telling us how much our students are challenged with both reading and with spelling. And so I don't think I would do it universally. And unfortunately, I don't think there's enough universal screening happening in our secondary, which I think would be very helpful. But if I have a student who is at risk, and I know that, I would definitely be doing spelling inventories in middle school and high school. And there are spelling inventories that do go up into those grade levels. And the thing is too, depending on how challenged the student is, you might even begin a spelling inventory with what you would think would be easier spellings, right? Because they just have not had, they're not secure in them yet. Oftentimes I think we call these kids like Swiss cheese kids. And we see it in their reading, but boy, do we see it in their writing and their spelling. So if you really want to be effective and efficient with your time, you would be using spelling inventories in the middle school and even in the high school for sure, or even into adulthood. If I had an adult, same thing, I would be using a spelling inventory because it's giving me additional information. But universally, I would be doing them in elementary school.
Okay, so is it that screener, kind of that K-6 window? But if you have students in the secondary classroom or setting that are receiving some intervention, or you're determining, do they need that, using that to help inform some group making or potential program for them would be helpful.
Absolutely, I would. It would be one, like I'm saying, we always have multiple data points, but it would definitely be one I would include in my assessment battery, yes.
Great. So one that's kind of probably more elementary would be, with these spelling inventories that you're giving 3 times a year, would you use the same list that had the same words each time?
Yes, 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 I would. We want to be comparing, and we want to be seeing, of course, if we're teaching too for kids who are at risk, are they improving? And of course, there'll be progress monitoring in between. So if you're focusing on a VCE pattern, you've taught it explicitly, you've done all the things that we've asked, in the earlier slides, you'd want to monitor again, but you would monitor with different words to see if can they transfer and generalize, right? So yes, you're going to progress monitor, but the kids will not remember 3-4 months down the road.
Right.
That's what we did, unfortunately, when we were putting spelling words on flashcards. Oh, we don't want memorization. We want them focusing on language and literacy. Yeah.
And I know you had mentioned that there are some screeners appropriate for middle school and high school. Might those be on your Padlet?
They are in the slides. They are listed in the slides. Because many of them are copyrighted, of course, I was given permission to use the letters one long ago. So that's why you see that one. But many of them are copyrighted, so I could not, but they are on the Padlet or in the slides as well.
Okay, so I'm going to ask 2 quick questions, and then we're going to give people follow-up time.
Okay.
One of the questions that kind of more of an elementary focus, when you're thinking about Tier 1 instruction, should teachers be basing that more on an encoding level or a decoding level, was a question from the chat.
Can you say that question again?
Sure. So you're looking at different, reading versus spelling abilities. And
Yes.
so is there a sweet spot, or which would you look at more to determine appropriateness of instruction at the Tier 1 level? More of a spelling?
I'm biased here. I'm always looking at both, right? If they're reading a decodable text from a pattern that we've taught them, remember what makes it decodable as a student, what's been taught, the scope and sequence. But I do dictation and they can't spell it. It's telling me that they still have a fuzzy representation of that word. I want them to have a high quality lexical representation so they can, because if they can't spell it, kids who say that they know in their oral language the word humongous, and they love that word. We want kids to love words, but they can't spell humongous. They can spell big. When they write, they're going to write the word big. So spelling impacts the quality and the quantity of writing, right? So I'm going to look at both always. They are two sides of the same coin. But again, when you're teaching spelling, you're teaching reading. If they can spell it, they can read it. So I'm doing both, but I'm looking at both. But if they can read it and they can't spell it, it's telling me I need to teach them how to spell it.
Right. There's that visible language. And I love that phrase, integrate, don't isolate. We really do.
Thank you. I've been saying it everywhere.
Yes. Now I'm going to start using that. So
okay, yeah, do it.
To you. So Pam, I know that we want to give people some processing time. I could sit here and talk to you all day, and I know other people are like, wait, my question, but we just so appreciate you being here with us, sharing your knowledge. Thank you for the Padlet. I so look forward to diving into all of the resources that you shared there. And we just appreciate you being with us. And I did want to mention to everybody, I know Pam said that in the Padlet, her handouts are there, and the handout should now also be posted on the Dyslexia Summit login site underneath that handouts tab. So you should have access to those. And thank you for allowing Pam to give us some of that in the moment reflection time. And even though you have those.
Yeah, and in closing, I do really want to thank you, Kate, and Dr. St. Martin, and thank you, John, for being my slide advancer. I was so stressed out about that, and he did such an amazing job. Thank you so much. And again, I want to call out my colleague, Dr. Erin Amy, who will be presenting later today. You'll see in the references the presentation that we did for the Patent Literacy Symposium, similar to this one. And we all know how valuable it is to have colleagues who are, the persons we always go to when we have that burning question and learn from. So I want to call out Dr. Tambra Eisenberg and Erin Amy as well. And they're also listed in the references. And what an honor it has been truly to be with you here this morning. And I wish you well and wonderful learning, which I'm sure is going to happen the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam.